You can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Mark Steyn Show. I'm Tonya Buxton and once again it is my privilege to be warming Mark's seat, and I wanted to also restate my wishes to him and his family. Coming up tonight, we're taking a look at Jamie Oliver's calls for a sugar tax to be used to fund the extension of free school meals. As a cook, this one really matters to me, but I'm a bit sceptical when it comes to the government telling us how and what to eat, considering their disastrous track record. Weight loss expert Steve Miller joins me shortly. Someone has been fined for catcalling, and we wanted to ask society, have we become too sensitive? Can we really legislate and grapple with the complexities of courtship? Nilali Dowding will be here to weigh in and give her opinions. As the Taliban continue their relentless war on women, and those who choose to protest against the headscarves in Iran are sentenced, we're looking at women's rights from an international perspective with Maya Toosey. Plus, just to round it all off, are you a Chardonnay, Shiraz or Sinisteri drinker? Well, Zoe Strimple is here for an indulgent finish as we sample some of the wonderful English wines and give you our take on the flourishing industry. All that's coming up and much more, including a quick bucking of the Buxton again. Goodness me. You won't want to miss it. But first, the latest headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Tonya, thank you very much. This is the latest from the GB newsroom. Our top story within the last hour. We've heard that Brazilian football legend Pelé has died. Widely considered to be one of the greatest footballers of all time, the three-time World Cup winner scored 757 goals in 831 games during a career spanning 20 years. The 82-year-old had been in hospital in Sao Paulo since the end of last month. He'd been undergoing treatment for colon cancer. Well, his family broke the news on social media, with his daughter posting, "We love you infinitely. Rest in peace." The Defence Secretary says the UK's response to China opening up travel abroad is under review. Ben Wallace's comments follow the government saying there were no plans to introduce mandatory COVID-19 tests for arrivals from China, unlike several other countries, including the US and Italy. Beijing has announced plans to reopen borders next week, despite the country's ongoing COVID surge that sparked concern. The Defence Secretary also insisted UK borders are safe as the military steps in to cover for striking Border Force officials. Unions claim the country's borders are less secure as more than 1,000 immigration officers walk out in a dispute over pay. A senior source has told GB News that passport control operations are running very smoothly at all 6 airports. Meanwhile, Labour MP Khalid Mahmood has told us he would support a general strike.
Support the rights of the people to be able to strike. If they want to coordinate that, they're totally at will to do that. And if you don't call that a general strike, yes, because the people who work want to have the right sort of pay and conditions, and they should be able to do that.
A third man has been arrested on suspicion of murdering 23-year-old Cody Fisher on Boxing Day. The non-league footballer was stabbed to death in the Crane nightclub in Birmingham, which now faces closure. West Midlands police have said a 22-year-old man has been detained in London. He's the third person to be arrested on suspicion of murder, while 4 others have been arrested on suspicion of assisting an offender. Merseyside police have said a third person has been arrested in connection with the fatal shooting of a 26-year-old woman in Wirral. Elle Edwards was killed outside a pub on Christmas Eve. Police say a 31-year-old man from Tranmere has been arrested on suspicion of conspiracy to murder. A man and a woman who were previously arrested are still being questioned by police. And the deadly storm that's been sweeping across North America, killing at least 69 people, is now bringing wet and windy weather to the UK. The Met Office says the knock-on effect of America's bomb cyclone will see spells of unsettled weather over the next 7 to 10 days. Forecasters have issued an amber weather alert for heavy rain tomorrow for parts of Scotland, warning of flooding and travel disruption. TV, online and DAB Plus radio. This is GB News Now. It's back to Mark Steyn with Tonya.
Now, as you've just heard, the Brazilian footballer Pelé has died this evening, aged 82. To many, he was the greatest to ever play the sport, and Pelé remains the only player to win 3 World Cups, doing so in 1958, 62 and 70. To react to his passing, I'm joined now by the former Southampton and England footballer, Matt Le Tissier. Now, Matt. You know, you're a football god yourself. How will the world be? How will the football world be now feeling now Le Tissier's not around anymore?
Well, Pelé was a very special player in the world of football, an incredible icon of the game. And as you mentioned there, 3 World Cup winners' medals, although one was retrospective. I think it was only in 2007 that he got his medal for 1962 because he didn't play in the final, but 2 goals in the 58 final, another goal in the 70 final, and without question, the greatest player of his generation. I think when you talk about the greatest player of all time, it's very difficult to compare players of different generations, but I think with him, you only have to look at the other great players of the time to hear what they said about Pelé, to know just how special he was. The likes of Cruyff and Beckenbauer talk about him as if he lived on another planet.
Matt, did you ever meet him?
I did get to meet him very briefly in Stoke City's ground a few years ago. I played in a charity football match for Gordon Banks, and Pelé came across. Obviously, he didn't play; he was getting on a little bit at that stage, but he came across to support Gordon, and I got to meet him and shake hands with him before the game, which was a very special moment. Because as a kid growing up, I heard all the stories. I was just a little bit too young to really see Pelé play in his prime. But you heard all the stories from my parents and my older brothers who could remember him playing. And when you see the footage of what he was like on a football pitch, for somebody who was, only 5'8", but you would never have guessed that from his aerial ability. But he was just, he had everything in his game, and he'll be sorely missed.
So, as an icon of sport, where does he stand for you amongst the greats like Messi and Ronaldo and Maradona?
Well, I think everybody will always consider Pelé in that conversation when they talk about the greatest of all time. As I said earlier, I find it very difficult to compare players of different generations. I think we can unequivocally say he was the greatest player of his generation, and I think he will always be spoken about when it comes to discussing players from different generations, because, as you say, his World Cup record of 3 wins, very likely to stick around for some time before someone will equal that. And I just feel like he was somebody who did so much good for the world after his playing career as well. He had a lot of ambassadorial stuff that he went on to do, and really tried to make a difference as a humanitarian as well, which says a lot about him.
Lovely. Matt Le Tissier, thank you very much. So, what do you think of when you think of the early noughties? Pop Idol, Trini and Susanna, Love Actually, the Iraq War. For me personally, it's the turkey Twizzler snatcher that was Jamie Oliver. Disclaimer, I like Jamie, and I don't doubt his good intentions. His 30-minute meals and other shows have got people cooking. They're useful. They help people out, giving them tips and trips while letting them make their own decisions. But this week, the nutritional salonist Jamie of 2005 has made a return. Children should be fed by the state, and it should be funded by the sugar tax, he solemnly declared. I used to quite like the idea of a sugar tax. I was so worried about childhood obesity that I thought, wouldn't it be marvellous if the government taxed cakes, donuts, custard creams and Monster Munch? And then we'd see our children no longer threatened with diabetes before they were even out of their short trousers. But it's prohibition. And we have learnt lessons about prohibition. Those who want to indulge will still find a way. We want to be slim more than we want to win the lottery, and yet 2/3 of us really aren't. There's something about these foods that makes them irresistible and addictive. We want to eat them and we want to eat more of them, but why? As a cook and nutritionist, I know that nature keeps carbs and fat largely separate. We have fats and proteins in meat, fish, eggs and dairy, and we have carbs in fruit, veg, grains and legumes. Nuts are the rare food that have fat, protein and carbohydrate in for good measure. But you know as well as I do, if over Christmas you were standing near the nut bowl, could you stop eating them? They're just irresistible and moreish, and you just can't stop consuming them. Well, the food companies know this. They know that the bliss point of any processed food is the perfect balance of fat and carbohydrate. We are evolutionarily wired to jump at the opportunity to eat such things as they are so rare in nature. So, what did the big food people do? They made ice cream, biscuits, cakes, crisps, and so on, all perfectly engineered to irresistibly be addictive, so you can't stop eating them. So you'd think that it would make sense to keep the producers of these things away from any form of nutritional advice. Damn right we should. But you would not believe it if I told you that Public Health England, now the somewhat more sinisterly named UK Health Security Agency, appointed a panel of processed food industry reps to create the UK Eat Well Guide, a kind of nutritional know-how. In March 2016, the UK Eat Well plate became the UK Eat Well Guide. The reason was they had to rebrand it because it was pointed out on Radio 4, no less, that someone had included a full-fat Coca-Cola in the first one. Can you imagine that? 11 panel members designed these guides, and these panel members basically constitute the who's who of what I call the fake food industry. They include representatives from the British Retail Consortium, the Food and Drink Federation, the Association of Convenience Stores, the Institute of Grocery Distribution and the British Nutrition Foundation. Don't listen to that head title, it's not what it says. Seriously, you couldn't make it up. It gets worse. This Eat Well Guide, which the brilliant Dr. Zoe Harcombe has renamed the Eat Badly Guide, is embedded in our school curriculum. One of the core components of the guide is that by age 7, children should be aware of all that they need in a balanced diet. They need to know that a diet is varied, to grow, to be active and to maintain health, and that we need to eat more of some foods and others and less of others, as depicted in the Eat Well plate. In other words, by age 7, children should be eating what the Eat Well plate or big processed food manufacturers are telling them to eat. Are you furious yet? Because I am. So again, I like Jamie Oliver and I know he means well, but there's a bigger priority than free school meals. And unfortunately, these free school meals will likely have been designed by these people who don't have our children's best interests at heart. At school and at home, our diet advice has been hijacked, and we wonder why so many people look overweight and unwell. Eggs are better for us for breakfast than sugary cereals, but Kellogg's and Weetabix, they won't tell us that. Why do they so little? Why do they do so little? Well, it's simple. They don't want to offend big business. Life BC, before COVID, I was a sugar tax supporter. AC, after COVID, I am not. The government overreached so far and controlled us so completely in a way that was previously unimaginable. I just don't trust them. Not just this present government, but any government. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. They took absolute power and abused it, and they are showing no signs of backing down with their 15-minute cities and let them eat insects and more of that nonsense. they need to remember that they work for us. We are not here to be told what to do. Enough is enough. How are people supposed to take control of their lives and nutrition if the advice itself is so corrupted? So free school meals may not be the worst idea in the world, though nothing is free. But far more important is get the processed food industry bigwigs the hell away from our children and get public services the hell away from us adults while they're at it. Let's get back to basics and teach our children how to cook delicious and nutritious meals that will set them up for life. If you'd like to know more about what's going on and how to eat well, I recommend you look at the work of Dr. Zoe Harcombe. I have learnt much from her. I have here now former Fat Families presenter Steve Miller. Hello, Steve. What do you think of
You're
the sugar
looking
tax?
very glamorous tonight, I have to say. Looking very gorgeous. Am I allowed to say that in this day and age with all these
Well,
misogyny
you're
claims?
allowed to say it to me, Steve. I love hearing it, especially as I'm getting older. But what do you think of the
Listen.
sugar tax?
Well, listen, the first thing to say, I'm actually a believer that, we've got to look after our kids. Of course we have. And if it means giving them a meal a day, I haven't got a problem with that. But I do have a problem with how it's being suggested we do it, which is through a sugar tax. Because frankly, the government, in my opinion, have wasted billions over the last few years on different, tack and trace or whatever it's called. They've wasted a lot of money and they could have funded it that way. A sugar tax penalises the poor. This is what people need to realise. It's one of those taxes, if we start putting tax on all sugary foods, well, first of all, what's sugary? Which ones are we going to tax? And secondly, of course, it's going to penalise the poorest people because the people from poorer communities still deserve a treat, but they're going to have to pay more for it. So no, I'm not a fan of sugar tax at all. What I am a fan of, big time, it kind of bolts into this, is parental role modelling and parental responsibility. Because frankly, and I know some people might not agree with me on this, that a lot of parents do great work to be role models for their kids. There are, frankly, some lazy parents in this country who are not good role models. And I'm sorry, I've got to take issue with all this blaming the food manufacturers stuff. All we seem to do in the UK is blame the food manufacturers. We blame the government. We blame the teachers. We blame the schools. It starts at home. And if people are going to manage their weight, they have got to take personal responsibility. And
I completely agree with you.
All this claptrap of airy-fairiness.
I completely agree with you, but the problem is that the guidance that a lot of people who you've decided I'm going to take responsibility for my life. I'm going to go and see what the NHS and what the government are advising. And what they're advising is not good. So I think it needs to start, don't you, with the government actually getting their stories right and not being backed by these people that make these processed foods.
I don't agree with you at all. No, I don't agree with you at all. And I'm afraid what you're doing is you're making it very complicated for people, again, saying, oh, all the advice you've got from the NHS, it's all been wrong. And we've never had so much government health education. And I've got to stand up for them a bit here. A lot of it has been very, very good. The last thing we need right now is to start saying to parents, oh, ignore all that advice you've had because it's all a load of rubbish. I don't agree with you. And actually, Tanya, I've got to say this. The vast majority of people, you go on the street, the vast majority of people, they know what they should eat to be slimmer. It's not rocket science. What we've done in this country is we've made it complex. We've made it complex. So as well as normalising obesity, we've made all of this stuff about what to eat to be slim really complicated, when actually it's really simple. It's in here. That's where it starts.
I agree with you there. I agree with you on that point. I do think, though, there's a lot of misinformation, and I think maybe somewhere along the line the manufacturers have to take some responsibility, because if you get a packet of something and it says healthy all over it, but actually it's low fat and full of sugar, then I think that that's misrepresentation, and I think it's very disingenuous that they're allowed to put these stickers on food saying that they're healthy when they're actually not.
So what do we do? What we don't do is start making it more complicated. What we do is we put little, very, very down-to-earth, You know, maybe it's my background, my working class roots, I don't know. But you put very down-to-earth labelling on and you don't make it complicated, because at the moment, labelling is so complex. We need to just put, you know, we just put, this will make you really fat. This will make you kind of fat if you're trying to lose weight. Rather than all of this complicated academic stuff that's decided in an ivory tower in North London.
Listen, I completely agree with you, but unfortunately, these people that are selling these kind of processed foods are just toxic for our children, full of bad fats and sugar. They want to sell this, and so they are nudging people to buy them, and that's where the problem happens. That's where the problem is.
You're talking down to parents there. Most parents know that if they are serving a certain cereal, there is a lot of sugar in it. We've got to stop all this, you know, oh, poor parents, let's patronise you because you don't know there's a lot of sugar in this, when in fact they do, because there's lots of responsible parents out there who, you know, aren't academics, aren't nutritionists, but know because they use their common sense. So I say no to complexity. I say stop blaming the food manufacturers. Yes, let's look after our children and pay for free school meals through general taxation and stop wasting tax on things like rainbows on police cars or other silly projects that don't work, like the tat and trace thing didn't work. Yes, I support that, and let's look after our kids. But let's not make it more complicated. Let's not start saying to people, oh, everything you've been told's rubbish and it's all the food manufacturers. Let's start giving people hope and aspiration.
OK, we'll end on that hope and aspirational note. Thank you very much. Coming up, catcalling is a criminal offence. But who's decided this? Campaigner and Miss Universe 1998, Leilani Dowding, is here. And don't forget to send in your views to gbviews@gbnews.uk. See you right after the break.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other pay-per-review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
As Mark Steyn says, this is the people's channel, so let's channel what the people are saying. We asked you, should processed food companies be allowed to advise the government on what we eat? David said, absolutely not. In fact, I'd be looking very deeply into the effects of fake food has on human beings. I mean, you're right there. I mean, it's bloody worrying. Oh, am I allowed to say that? Anyway, Leslie says, no, conflict of interests, question mark. She's completely right. And Bob says, they are working for the same team, nefarious evil. Yeah, I agree with you there as well. Alfred also said, based on my experiences of hospital food, absolutely not. Wow, now that is a real one to come back to, isn't it? The type of foods available in hospital are shocking. But now, last week, a man from Ilford was fined £100 for catcalling as part of an undercover Met Police operation, partnered with Redbridge Council. Redbridge said they are very glad to be the first borough to use the Public Space Protection Order. I bet they are. Of course, as a woman, I was no stranger to catcalling. Well, I used to be when I was younger. And there are definitely circumstances where it crosses the line, where strangers on the street harass you. It's not only unpleasant, but it's undeniably scary. And that's why we have laws in place like the Public Harassment Act of 1997. Maybe the rise of sexual assault has more to do with unvetted coppers and a clash of cultures which view women as objects instead of people. Maybe it's the police who really need policing. But does the average guy in the age of eroding masculinity need to feel even worse about their manhood? Do we want to live in a world where we have to sign a consent form before we make love? Should we strive to culturally educate men to understand when something is consensual or when it's reciprocated and when it's not? The main problem with this catcalling law is who decides the line between unwanted verbal harassment and a guy giving you a beautiful, well-meant comment. Here to discuss it is campaigner and Miss Universe 1998, Lilani Dowding. Lilani, what do you think about being catcalled? Do you get offended when you're catcalled?
You know what? First of all, I wanted to look up the exact definition of catcalling, and it was really, really hard to find because it said harassment, but then it would say wolf whistling, and then it was pretty vague aside from that. So I watched a video of a woman walking down the street, and they used examples of catcalling, and shockingly, a couple of examples was somebody saying "Good morning, beautiful," and "Smile." And so, you know, I walked down the street in a mood and someone said smile, and I do a smile, and I'm like, oh gosh, I must look really grumpy today, and it puts a smile on my face. And you know, obviously, in my youth, I was wolf whistled at, and I never found it offensive. I'm actually a little bit sad that no one even bothers anymore. But it's
likewise.
Yeah, and it's like, where are we going to draw the line? It's a very slippery slope. And, you know, Steve Miller was just on and he gave you a lovely compliment. He said, oh, you look gorgeous tonight, Tanya. Then he was like, oh, am I allowed to say that? And that's what's happened to society and men. You know, they don't know what they're allowed to do or what women are going to get offended by.
That's exactly it. And I think common sense will tell us what's offensive and what's not. You know, if somebody says to you, hello, darling, you're looking beautiful this morning, then I turn around and say thank you very much. But if they're kind of making sexual comments or something like that, that is offensive. And we have laws against that. I mean, who decides the difference between catcalling and complimenting? That's what's really important here, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's the problem, and that's where it's really vague. There are no proper definitions of what it is, and we don't want to go down that route of men being afraid to say, you know, make a compliment or say something, because, you know, there are women out there who are easily offended if a man opens the door, like, well, what are they saying, you know, that I can't open my own doors? Or if a man does something that he would do for his mother, like, can I help you with this? You know, they look as though they're struggling, or they're by the side of the road with a flat tire, and they say, look, can I give you a hand? no man wants to come across as creepy, I'm sure, but there's a lot of women that find offence by that. But I love it. I love it if a man, I've been struggling to put things into the boot of my car when I've been out shopping and someone said, can I help you? And it's, it's great when somebody does that. And that is the problem.
I think I also find it strange sometimes when I'm in the tube and I'm helping a woman carry a pram down and I think, why haven't any of the men asked? I mean, maybe the reason none of the men are asking to help is because they're so frightened of being rebuffed. Do you think that, I mean, I've got young sons, and do you think that this is going to scare the younger generation from just basically flirting with each other?
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, just by Steve's reaction saying, oh gosh, can I say that? That's a grown man. What are the youth going to be thinking? And another thing as well is we've seen these posters on the tube. You mentioned the tube talking about staring or looking onto eye contact. So it was eye contact. The next thing, you can't look at somebody, you can't smile at somebody. Obviously, there's really creepy staring, but a lot of people know what that is. But to have these posters all over the tube talking about staring being sexual harassment, that's another line that we're going down. And I do think it is a bit of a slippery slope. And like you said, there are harassment laws. So maybe the police should be spending their time going after women who have legitimate stalkers or make complaints about men, not going undercover because they might have a woman being wolf whistled at. We need to draw that line. And it is worrying about what young boys might think that they can or can't say to a girl.
I mean, it's amazing that they're undercover Met police officers doing this. I mean, we don't have them turning up for crimes. We don't have them doing their actual jobs of policing, and there they are trying to catch someone out for wolf whistling at someone. It's incredible. And back to that story about staring. I actually made a good friend on the tube once. It was a young man, and we used to get the tube every morning from the same station. And he was always staring, so I went over and said, hello. And we ended up being friends after that. But if this law was about then, I wouldn't have that friend because people are too scared to look at each other anymore. It's really sad for young men. What do you think we can do to prevent them from feeling that they can't talk to women anymore or flirt anymore?
I mean, that's a really good question because it's quite a hard one with what's being put in place. But, I think women should not take everything as, a sexual approach. You can always smile back or say good morning. And if you see somebody you walk down the street and you see the same face, say good morning. There's nothing wrong with good morning and a smile. And, they're not going to think you're necessarily hitting on them. And you don't have to take every single thing a man says as, them hitting on you. And I think, that's the problem that we have now. Just, the old social niceties, letting men be chivalrous, saying thank you when they open a door or offer to help you. A thank you goes a long way in a smile.
Lilani, thank you. You've been brilliant. And there's just any men out there, if you want to open the doors and help us with our shopping, Lilani and I are happy with that. Thank you very much.
Definitely.
Coming up, why do countries like Iran and Afghanistan treat women so badly? Iranian political commentator Maya Tusi is here. And Buck the Buxton looms. Send in your views to gbviews@gbnews.uk. It's all coming and you won't want to miss it.
Tonight on Farage, we have an exclusive poll telling us about the popularity of Nicola Sturgeon's new gender laws. We'll ask, what's the point of a Tory party if they're now a high-tax party? I'll ask, is the ghost of COVID coming back to us from the Far East, and what should we do? And on Talking Pints tonight, I'm going to talk to somebody who leads a new political party. It's called...
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Do Islamic theocracies have a problem with women? Are they reformable? The Taliban regime in Afghanistan has banned women from education. The rule of the mullahs in Iran has long mandated girls wear the hijab in public. Other humiliations include not being able to watch a game of football at Tehran's Hughes Azizi Stadium. Polygamy, the taking of multiple wives by a single man, is illegal, common even, across many of the Muslim states. Until 2018, women were not even permitted to drive in Saudi Arabia. They still today require permission from their legal guardian, a male, father or husband, to acquire a licence to get behind the wheel. Let us not forget that Islam has many forms and many interpretations, but the subservience of women to men appears at first glance to be a common theme across the Islamic world. Here to discuss this with us is the political commentator Maya Tusi. Maya, why don't Islamic countries like Iran and Afghanistan want women to be educated?
Mainly because, actually, for those who know, Imam Tawhidi, who was an Islamic cleric in Iran, but he was a reformist and he escaped Iran and he now lives in Australia. He actually says that Muslims can be reformed over time, but Islam can't. That's the difference between Islam and Christianity. The Islamic text is fixed, whereas with Christianity, both Christianity and Christians evolved over time. So that's one difference. Every system is about the balance between chaos and order, or freedom and order, and it's about the degree. So when it comes to the Islamic countries, you have certain places like Saudi that there is essentially cultural consent to an extent, and so it's actually the population haven't had the opportunity to be told something else. So they actually, essentially, politics and the political establishment is a mirror held at themselves. Whereas Iran is a slightly different case because the population as a culture, that's what they call it, the Islamic occupation. They are, as people, they're not on the same boat. So this is about the balance between Islam and Muslims in terms of the evolution of it or modernization of it.
So someone like me, for example, who is a kind of modern, cultural Christian, part of the Greek Orthodox faith, I don't do religion, but culturally I love it all. Is that what you're saying? If there is reform, it can't be Islam, it can only be Muslims that reform themselves?
Yeah, exactly. So whether it's the Islamic text itself or right now, the deep toxic culture of some of the Muslims, or Islamists as we call them, have, it's not really just against women or children. And it's also against men and just humans in general. They just control them differently and separately. So a sort of system that we have in communist countries, or we had in communist states, where, for example, in order to maintain order in society, they will prevent you from getting rich. It will prevent you from having individual choice. So that is a similar thing, but obviously on a whole different level. So women, for example, being forced to wear a headscarf or something, or even like a niqab, that's a symbolic thing to ensure that they know that they are under control. It's the same thing. Again, men also have restrictions on a different level. And so they start from early days. Everything is about, it's not really about any morality. It is not really about morality.
So this is more about governmental control than it is about Islam. This is not the true Islam.
Well, my controversial view is the whole Islamic ideology was a political ideology anyway. Right now, obviously, there's a faith aspects to it. So a lot of Muslims are just normal Muslims. They just have a faith. That's different. That's just the link between Islam and the rest of the Abrahamic religions. But as a text, it was clearly a political ideology. It was about control. So it's not a surprise that Islamic leaders choose the text to run establishments, whether you want to call it government or states.
So what can Muslims within this country who don't agree with this kind of dictatorship, what can they do to help themselves?
Whether, Muslims here or back in the Middle East or North Africa, what you kind of need, first things first, there is a bit of responsibility on every individual when it comes to whether it's terrorism or extremism or anything else that dodgy comes out from the Islamists. And the so-called moderate Muslims, normal people, they need to start speaking out. That way you'll prevent a non-Muslim who criticize like Islamic terrorism, for example, from being called an Islamophobe. So if you actually have Muslims coming out to fight back, then that will be a good start. But again, we can't really dictate people what to do. This is not a dictatorship. It's just it would be lovely if we had that scenario. But the other issue is we have enough evidence to show that a lot of the normal people in the Islamic world, the ones who are still in those countries, they are more liberal and reformist than some of the people who escaped those countries, who come to the West. Some of the people who are actually here, they are not integrating. They're not willing to actually embrace freedom. And so that is a bit of a dilemma. So you kind of want to, should we replace them with the ones who are still there? But we don't know exactly what to do. That's the problem.
Mayor, it's always wonderful to speak to you. Thank you so much. Are we proud to be English? But do you drink English wines? Spectator, Telegraph columnist and wine connoisseur Zoe Strimple is here. And it's almost time for Buck the Buxton. Don't touch that dial.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Steyn. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes & Co.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Here in Britain, we are avid consumers of wine. We've always been a relatively minor producer of it. But perhaps this has been advanced by misconceptions such that British cuisine is bland or that the British palate is unsophisticated. Nothing could be further from the truth. What if I were to tell you that winemaking has been a custom of these islands for over 1,000 years, ever since the Romans brought over the practice? And by the way, they learnt it from the Greeks, obviously. Well, as a matter of fact, it's making a resurgence. In the last 8 years, grapevine planting in England has doubled, with more options available on the market than ever before. So today, our palates are going to take a dip into the cool reservoirs of Essex, a run through the rolling hills of Sussex, and a leisurely stroll through the woodlands of Kent. I say, when in Italy, drink Prosecco. When in France, drink champagne. When in Spain, drink cava. And when in England, drink English sparkling wine. And I have a bottle of it right here. Joining me now to prance and jig through the joys of English wine is Spectator and Telegraph columnist Zoe Strimple. Right, I gather that you were a bit of a sceptic when it came to English wines. I'm going to try and open this without making a mess. It's highly unlikely, though.
Yeah, so I was
try not to get the lights. Here we go.
Oh, no. Oh, this feels dangerous.
Oh, look at that. There. Oh, and I knew I was going to make a mess. Here we are. So you were a sceptic?
So I was a sceptic because I associate English wine with, like, just very high price tags for what you're getting. I remember being really excited to try Nye Timber, and then, you know, fancy places like Glyndebourne you can try, and it sort of costs the same, you know, more than a champagne. And so I was thinking, is this actually better than champagne? And the answer was always no. And so I sort of applied that to other English wines. I mean, there was a time like Chapel Down.
I love Chapel Down, and I like 40 Hall as well. I love these English wines, these English sparkling wines.
They're okay. I mean, Chapel Down has grown on me, but I just remember there was a time about maybe 5-10 years ago when I was trying still wines from Sussex and Kent, and I just thought, it's just like, I mean, the packaging's great. I want to love this, but I don't. So I was a sceptic.
And time has passed, and they have evolved, and the wine culture has grown in Britain, and I think that they've learnt lots of lessons from travelling abroad, haven't they, and going to other...
You know, that's a good question, if they learnt lessons that way. I think they're just clever, and I think that they probably all know what they're supposed to do, but they've just figured out how to coax the most out of the land. Which, now, remind me of which is... so Court Gardens. This is, I remember, so I did a tasting recently, which is how I came to write this article. about English wines, and this was easily the best of the kind of. But I can't. But where is it from? They're all sort of Hampshire, Sussex.
I'd have to put.
This is South Downs, and then they go right in Saxon times on the label, and I think that's what I found so beguiling. You're sort of like in
because
this English history, yeah.
And that's what I love. But realistically, Zoe, you wouldn't dream of drinking Italian wines in Spain. You wouldn't dream of drinking, different.
I'm so keen on having my one day of not drinking booze.
Okay, today was the day. So you wouldn't drink, Spanish wines in Greece. You just wouldn't do that. I think
That's
it's really. You drink the wines of the country, and we need to encourage people to drink English wines more. No.
That's a really interesting point, actually. In a way, if I was a tourist in Britain, I'd want to drink English wines. I think the thing about London and the UK in general is that it's always, well, especially London, has always been a sort of massive global wine importer. So people come from all over the world to London to have access to wine from all over the world. So it's a little bit different. You wouldn't say that about Rome or Milan or Berlin necessarily.
Okay.
But I think it is a very cool thing to be able to do, and I think English food and produce and all that has become quite chic in recent years, and it's a nice bit of heritage branding, and I think English wine, apart from now starting to taste quite good, they have very cool sort of packaging and marketing, and they've sort of managed to make a sort of quirky sort of market out of it. Yes, and obviously if you're here and you can drink the wine, I still have to say I have reservations about whether it's the best bang for your buck.
Okay, but you're being very slow on pouring the wine, may I add so.
Sorry,
I mean, let's
I've got to pour for. Oh my God, both of us.
You're
right.
pouring for both of us. Yes.
Oh God, right.
So what I would say is that yes, it is a little bit more expensive to buy indigenous wines in Britain, but I think it's worth it. I think it's worth it because if we buy more wines, the wines will become more affordable, and then we'll be able to grow more, and it's an industry that we could market on.
Well, not only that, but people are saying, with Armageddon, with the climate and what have you, the new France will be the south of England.
This is lovely.
This is called Hip Rosé, and it is. It seems to be from East Sussex. So, okay, let's see. So the rosés were the ones I was not. Rosé is a tough sell. English rosé is a tough sell, I think, because we associate it so much with French.
But I think I can taste the fruits in there. I think I mean, I'd like it a little bit more chilled, guys in the gallery. But what is that face, though?
I need to know the price point. If this was like £7, I'd be like, fine.
Oh, no, come on. It's more than £7. I don't think... Can you get a British wine for less than about 17 quid?
No, and I think that's tricky.
Yeah.
And so I tried some delicious English wine.
That one was £17, actually.
It was 17?
Spot on,
okay, well... It's good, but you are getting the sort of satisfaction of having a wine from 10 miles away from your house or whatever. Let's try this.
The reason I like a lot of the British whites and the roses is that they're very dry. They tend to have an acidity that kind of cuts through as a cook, fatty meats and things like that. That's why I think they work so well. What's this one here?
This one is Dog Rosé. I think it's from the same. It's from the same place, so it's another East Sussex. So we shouldn't dilly-dally too much on this one.
Again, I like it. It's crisp. It's got a freshness about it.
So I think this one's really good, actually.
Yeah, I can see myself sitting in the garden in the summer.
Yeah.
Glass of rosé in hand. It's British. I like that.
I'm a fan.
I don't know as much about British reds.
Well, should we have a quick try of the white? But you're going to have it in a champagne flute.
That's okay. Here
can't go wrong.
Here at GB News, we struggle a little bit with our glasses. I think it's, but we can be forgiven for drinking out of the wrong glass.
So I have high hopes for this one because it's from this court garden. Ditchling white, and I always think Ditchling is so that's what's nice about it because I know Ditchling, I know people that live in Ditchling, and when I go to France or whatever, I don't really know the village that something is from if I'm drinking the wine there.
It's a little bit sweet for me. What do you think?
I think it's nice.
Oh, well, see,
happily.
But that's the main thing about wines. So we have different palates and we have different things that we like. So people should go out and try them all. I do think that we should invest in our wine harvest and that we should try and spend money on British wines to help the industry. So even if it is a little bit more than normal, why not try and just get it? On that note, I'm going to have one sip of this lovely red.
Yeah. I just feel like markets have to speak for themselves. We can't have a sort of centralised. People have to. The wine has to be good enough for people to spend their hard-earned pennies on. We can't ask them to spend for the nation unless we're actually in a kind of World War II situation. But I think they're getting there. But those prices just do have to come down.
Okay.
All right, what do you think of this?
I like it. So, look, give it a go if you can afford it. But up next is Dan Wootton Tonight, live with Neil Fox. Neil, what have you got for us today?
I've got a fabulous panel that's going to be joining me to discuss some big stories. Got Sean Bailey, Emma Burnell and Culvia Ranger as well. We're going to be looking at homelessness, crime, the demise of really good Christmas telly, and of course discussing that age-old thing, to make New Year's resolutions or not to make New Year's resolutions. That is the question and the subject of my opening monologue. So, should be a good one. And save a glass for me later.
I will. I'll save you a glass. That's all coming up after the weather. And as Mark Steyn says, stay safe, I say stay joyful and stay free.
Hello there, I'm Claire Nazir with your weather update. An amber warning for heavy rain has been issued across the southern parts of Scotland, a broad yellow warning for rain, Northern Ireland, central and southern areas of Scotland, and a warning for snow and ice across northern Scotland. Yes, the weather remains unsettled and cold in places, particularly in the north. One area of low pressure clearing towards the far north, another one approaching from the west. And this is an area of heavy rain, which will track across Northern Ireland, clipping northern England and pushing towards Scotland. At the same time, rain will approach Wales as well as the West Country as the winds pick up some strength. And the winds will be a feature of the weather through the first part of Friday. Severe gales across the North Channel, gales across Irish Sea coast as well as Channel coast, and a wet and windy start to the day. So that amber warning reflects the fact that there's going to be issues on the roads with surface water, high rainfall totals. We could actually see some flooding here, so a risk of some really quite torrential rain for a time, but it clears quite quickly by lunchtime. Most places seeing some drier skies away from Shetland as well as Orkney, although a legacy of showers will arrive across Northern Ireland and Scotland through the afternoon. A blustery breeze here, a few showers running in across the southeast of England. Now overnight, some clearer skies yet again across more southern areas. Still icy across the far north of Scotland with the risk of snow above around 200 metres. And then some sporadic bursts of rain come in from the west across many parts as we head into the early hours of New Year's Eve. So still unsettled for the last day of 2022. Rain comes and goes through the day on New Year's Eve. Still a keen breeze coming in from the southwest. Even so, Scotland and Northern Ireland will remain cold. And through the day, the rain will intensify across more southern areas. A blustery day wherever you are, with showers to follow across more western areas, but even a little sunshine to end 2022 for Northern Ireland. Temperatures then will struggle in the north, milder in the south. And here's your outlook into the beginning of 2023. Dry skies on Monday with even some sunshine.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.